How We Make Movies is brought to you by Microsoft Surface, Assimilate, Azo and AJA, Moviola, and Canon Hollywood. Welcome back to How We Make Movies. I'm your host, Amanda Lippert, and we have a very special guest today. He's a photographer, author, and Emmy Award-winning director. He has directed several films for the PBS series American Masters, documenting American icons such as Mel Brooks, George Cukor, Gene Kelly, and Cary Grant, just to name a few. His newest film focuses on the life of legendary star Bing Crosby, whom you may know for his holiday hit, White Christmas. But what many people don't know about Bing is that before falling out of favor with the media, he was the most popular and influential star of his time and remains the most recorded performer in history with nearly 400 hit singles, an achievement that no one, not Frank Sinatra, Elvis, or the Beatles, has come close to making. He's here to talk about his newest film. Please give a warm welcome to director Robert Trachtenberg. It was some introduction, but I felt like I really had to get all those details in because there's so much in the movie that you'd otherwise miss. Can you tell us what made you want to make this movie in particular?
The estate that controls the Bing Crosby Trust, which is family run. I was made aware of the holdings that they had. Mm-hmm. They had tens of thousands of photos, home movies. The key to it all for me was he was very, very innovative in terms of his use of technology. He bought one of the first dictaphone machines, which you would dictate your letters into. But what he did was...
Kind of like Siri for text now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you would record them onto these clear plastic tape things, but it wasn't tape, they were plastic, and they would run through the machine. He saved every one of them. And so there were thousands of his letters in his own voice recorded onto these that they had in shoe boxes, in boxes in his basement. So the idea that we could get him talking about his own life through his letters was the thing that really sold me also.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, this wasn't your first film. You've directed quite a few.
Right.
And quite a few for the American Masters series. Now, how did you end up getting involved with PBS?
Pure luck. I was the last person, I'm primarily a photographer, celebrity photographer, and I was the last person to shoot Gene Kelly before he died. And I got to be friendly with him, and when he passed away, I thought someone should do a definitive documentary on him. And
Gene Kelly, by the way, is the star of Singing in the Rain and An American in Paris.
Tons of classic MGM musicals. And his estate was a little messed up when he died. There was some problems with lawsuits and things like that. So I had to sort of wait it out until the dust settled. And in the meantime, I turned my attention to George Cukor, who is one of the great directors of Hollywood's golden era, really along with Capra and Hitchcock. He's right up there with those guys. He directed so many famous movies. I mean, he won the Oscar for My Fair Lady, but he directed tons of the Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy movies, and so many Gaslight. He won more Academy Awards for his stars than just about any director. Anyhow, I turned my attention to him, and I hooked up PBS with Turner Classic Movies, or Turner Entertainment at the time, which they control the Warner Brothers and MGM and RKO library. Mm-hmm. And these films are so clip dependent, the only way to financially do them is to sort of hammer out some kind of an arrangement.
Right.
So we worked out a deal. And that was the way, luckily everyone got sold on the idea, and that's the way I did the first one.
Now, what was amazing to me about this story is that that was the film about George Cukor was your first film that you'd ever made. Is that correct? So, you know, never having a film before, not having a reel, and then going to PBS and Turner Entertainment, like, what did you say to them that made them greenlight this project?
You know, what can I say? I put on the most professional face that I could. I did a sizzle reel before people were doing sizzle reels, because this film was a lot, I think 1999 or 98 I started with this. And I did that. I did this really elaborate presentation, this essentially a brochure that folded out and out and out and out. And You know, somebody at CAA who I was friends with vouched for me, though he didn't know that I could do it. But he kind of vouched for me to PBS. He just said, you know, I think he's not going to mess this up. I had a bit of a track record as a photographer, so they took a chance. And I have to really say Susan Lacey, who began and created the American Masters series, which I believe is in its 29th year on PBS, and has won truly something. I think it just won something like its 19th Emmy.
Wow. And
it's won Peabodys and Grammys, and it even won an Oscar for one show. She took a chance, and you know, I have her to thank, really.
Yeah, because you've done many more for them since. And
yes.
You have an Emmy now, also because of this series.
I do, for the Mel Brooks film that aired last year.
Yeah. Do you guys want to see the trailer for the movie? Yeah, awesome. I loved it.
Bing Crosby opening, take 2.
Joshua, 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 Joshua.
He was big in movies, big on radio, big on records. He was damn good.
Bing Crosby had 50 million people listening to his show weekly. 50 million people. He was the most familiar and beloved voice in the world.
He had this intimate relationship with the entire country, and the power that was just incredible.
Bing created the art of intimacy. You just realize you don't have to push.
He wasn't hard to work with. He was hard to find sometimes.
Dolores Hope said, we just drank. They just drank. There was nothing wrong with that. Everybody just drank.
The rules were there. They were expected to be obeyed. If they weren't obeyed, certain punishments were assigned, and you never had a side to the story.
It's one of the things that people think of when his name comes up. Oh, he's the guy who hit his kid.
Nobody would dream that Crosby would fade. He was not only one of the most important voices of the 20th century, he was incredibly entertaining.
Some guy come up and he said, didn't you used to be Bing Crosby?
Singer, actor, innovator. Bing Crosby was the first multimedia star of the 20th century and beloved the world over. Now, American Masters brings you Bing Crosby Rediscovered, the story you only thought you knew.
Some of the specific reasons that you wanted to make this film in particular, as far as your connection to the story and what had happened with Bing?
This is an odd thing because the last film was Mel Brooks, where he's universally loved. Young, old, dogs, cats, everyone loves Mel Brooks. And then you have Bing Crosby, and he truly was, we say it in the movie, and it's a fact. At the end of World War II, they did a poll, and he ranked higher than the Pope in popularity. The Pope or the President. I mean, he was the most popular, beloved entertainer on Earth.
The Beatles can't say that either.
No, it's the facts are astounding. You know, the numbers and I mean, he was the #1 box office star 5 years in a row. The numbers are crazy, factually, but he has fallen way, way, way out of favor. And the reason for that is a couple years after his death, his eldest son wrote a tell-all book. And in that book, he described a really hard childhood, growing up with him, and being hit by him, a lot of corporal punishment and everything. And the truth is, not that many people bought the book, but the worst part of the book was excerpted in People magazine, and it started, the papers picked it up, and it steamrolled. And at the time, the family, he had 4 sons from his first marriage. They all were very, very troubled, and it has come to light now. What we really confirmed doing this film is that 2 of the kids from the first family were born with fetal alcohol syndrome. His wife had a very, very severe drinking problem. They had very troubled childhoods and adulthoods as well. So this book comes out, it really ruins his reputation, and the family, his second family, because he remarried and had 3 more children, they are adults now, and he sort of taught them to stay below the radar and not sort of answer to the press and everything. And so they didn't. And the result of it is that he kind of got buried under an avalanche of bad press, and the family didn't respond. You would do damage control now, and they didn't do any. And so decades have gone by, and people have this real animosity towards him. And it turns out that the book is greatly exaggerated. Before he died, the son admitted that parts of it were exaggerated and teased out, you know, to make it more newsworthy. And it's sort of like now, 30 or 40 years later, we're kind of doing damage control. Yeah. And the weird thing is I didn't have a particular affinity for him, but I knew this, how do you go from being so beloved to being close to forgotten? Is an odd thing.
Well, I think that that's really interesting because I remember watching TNT after school with my grandpa and watching old movies and hearing the name Bing Crosby, but I didn't hear it as much as I heard like Frank Sinatra and Elvis and, you know, like other bigger stars, what I thought was bigger at the time. And, you know, if a whole generation ignores you, then the next one doesn't even know about you. So, yeah, like when I was reading the stats, I was really surprised. Like, what? Who is this guy? Like, how is he so popular and nobody ever talks about him?
Yeah, I mean, his recording of White Christmas, I think it's over 5 billion copies. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. He's also a generation before Sinatra even. His height was in the 30s and 40s. Right. So he was kind of slowing down when Sinatra hit his stride. And he actually helped Sinatra, and they really loved each other, and they performed together. But he was a generation before. His height was the late 20s through the 40s. You know, he won an Oscar. He was just the biggest, the #1 radio show, the #1 recording artist, and the #1 film star all at the same time.
So what do you think that your film does for his reputation, and how did you try to achieve that?
I mean, we just sort of told the truth and cleared up a lot of information. I mean, you know, first of all, we're sort of celebrating American Masters. What they do is they celebrate someone's artistry and why we're telling people that they are American Masters. So that part was actually easy. And then the rest of it, we just finally told the truth. I mean, the kids were born damaged. We actually have a never before seen interview with the eldest son before he died, where he actually just says how messed up things were for him and his brothers. And it's really sad. It's a very, very sad situation. I mean, he says he was born an alcoholic, so he kind of never had a chance with all this, being born into all this fame and wealth and all, you know, of who his father was.
Yeah.
So.
One of the first quotes in the movie was from Tony Bennett, who was being interviewed, and he said, talking about Bing and his ability to connect to the lyrics, which is why he was such a big star, is that Bing created the art of intimacy, yet off-screen he was very private. Can you talk about, as a filmmaker and as an artist yourself, do you feel a responsibility to your subjects in taking sensitivity and handling their private information?
Yeah, well, this isn't a true Hollywood story, you know, or it's PBS, it's American Masters, and the focus really is on their career. So, in a nutshell, I sort of have a rule of thumb: if the extramarital affair didn't break up the marriage, it's not. If it doesn't inform their artistry, for example, if it doesn't, if it's not a major element of the story, then it's not really something I'm going to go into. Also, when you do these films, you paint with a much bigger brush than you would with like a 600-page biography. In fact, there was a biography that came out that was, I think, like 600 or 800 pages. It was only part 1. It only went up to 1940. The guy is still writing the second part. Wow. And it's been like 20 years. So we're waiting for part 2 to come out. So you can really go into minutia. But not only is this informative, but it has to be entertaining, so you've got to keep I can't stop for every affair somebody's gonna have. Because again, if it busted up the family, or, you know, like if I was doing Sinatra, for example, when he broke up with Ava Gardner, it really informed his recordings of the period. But nothing like that happened with Crosby. So it didn't, you know, it didn't really matter.
He helped revive Rosemary Clooney's career. I'm from Cincinnati, so she's really huge there.
He helped a lot of people. That's him with Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland. He helped Judy Garland at a low point in her career. We talk about that in the movie. He helped Rosemary Clooney after she had a nervous breakdown and was really not going to perform again. He helped a lot of people career-wise. He gave actors who he started with. He did Mack Sennett's shorts when he first came to Hollywood as a comedian, not even a singer. And he always remembered his co-stars, and when he became a star, he would get these people who were really forgotten roles in films. And there's a great story, which I don't think hasn't made it to the final cut, but he you know, said, I want you to hire this friend of mine to the director to play like an elevator operator or something. And then he got to the set and he goes, where is he? He goes, well, it's just such a small role, we just hired somebody else. And he goes, you know, I'll be golfing and you call me when you get him on the set. He was incredibly loyal and looked out for so many people and made sure they were on the payroll, or guys he knew, musicians whose wives were pregnant, he'd make sure they got on the radio show that week so they could get that money, you know. He really looked out for a lot of people. People don't realize that.
What was some of the stuff that you learned about Bing that you didn't realize?
Yeah. He's kind of, again, I drank the Kool-Aid to a degree. I thought he was kind of cold and aloof. And it's also because I didn't, you know, you remember him, people of a certain age remember him from these bad Christmas specials he did towards the end of his life with his second family. And they're very hokey, and even his kids in the movie admit how hokey they were, except he did this very cool duet with David Bowie that we show. And it showed how progressive he was musically. He was the first guy who really, he got Louis Armstrong cast in a movie. It was the first starring role for a black performer in a movie. He insisted on the casting.
And they gave him hell about it too,
They gave him hell. They didn't want to cast Louis Armstrong at all, and he insisted on it. He had a thing in his contract at Paramount called the Crosby Clause. I think he was at Paramount for about 19 years. He would never be billed alone above the title. He always shared billing. And he laughingly said, it's because if the movie stinks, I don't take all the blame. But he was really, really generous, and he always wanted to push someone up along with him.
Yeah.
You know?
So a lot of the footage is old footage, and you have to be the one to curate the story and put all the pieces together and figure out where it's going to go and what the story is going to be that you want to tell. And then the other half of it is sitting down with people that knew him and getting them to tell you their story and stitching that together. Is there any secret to getting people to open up and share things maybe that they haven't shared before?
Well, everyone's dead. Let's start with that. I mean, he would have been 100. He was born in 1903. I mean, except for this, all the kids from the first family are dead. The second wife is alive, and the kids, who are all in the film, the kids, they're, you know, grown-ups now. But, you know, luckily, I can show people who are hesitant the other films, luckily, and they can see how I've treated sort of sensitive subjects in the Cary Grant film or the Gene Kelly film, and they go in with a little bit of trust. So luckily, I have something to show them instead of begging for their trust or anything like that. You know, you just sort of have to feel them out and see where they're willing to go and how far you can push them. You know.
Yeah. Have you had any examples of times where it wasn't working out so well?
You know, weirdly enough, I've been so lucky. I can't think of a time when I really can't. And I've interviewed some really difficult people, particularly with the Gene Kelly film, who had a lot of animosity towards him and didn't want to do it. And I convinced them to do it. And then they said they weren't going to speak badly of him. I said, you don't have to. And then they sat down and just said whatever they wanted. So, you know, I didn't even have to, they didn't censor themselves.
It's really funny when you put a camera in front of somebody's face, how, I don't, you know,
look
like
what's happening now.
Yeah. This conversation is actually totally different than the other conversation we had. No, but it's true, like, it is kind of like a drug. If you ever been on the opposite side of the camera and noticed that like it like changes your behavior a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's something a little sadistic about it in that sometimes you'll be interviewing someone and they'll get emotional and they'll start to cry or they'll tear up or something, and you're quiet, but I have to say, you're thinking, great, I have an ending to the film, or now I have, you're like, it's sort of,
That's when you've got your Hollywood hat on.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, thank God they're crying,
Finally, I've got something. It's going to give it that arc right at the end.
Yeah.
So, speaking of arcs and, stories and, what is your process? How do you stitch these pieces together to create a story? I think that must be the most daunting feeling at the beginning of a film, just looking at boxes of pictures and doing your online research, and then having these boxes of tapes and not knowing what footage you're going to find, and
Yeah, it's this one was particularly crazy because up until the end, when we were supposed to deliver, I mentioned to you earlier today, at the last possible minute, I'm not kidding, the last possible minute, someone from the estate found a suitcase under a bed at his house, which his widow still lives in, with a treasure trove of World War II photos of him entertaining the troops. I mean, so, you're searching literally all over the world sometimes for, it's like a
And you said you were in touch with some old collectors?
We were in touch, my researcher, Amy Shearson, and I were in touch with people who, they'd say, yeah, I have all this stuff, and you'd say, great. Can you, just scan it and send it? And they say, we don't have a computer, we don't have email, we don't use the internet. What? And you'd be like, well, can you go, what? I don't know what to tell you. It's like, do you have a cell phone? No, I don't have a cell phone. Or I have a cell phone with no camera.
How did you find these people?
It's these collectors, these rabid, these people who, I shouldn't say that, who like live in their mother's basement still, or, they just, one links to another, because when they're rabid fans, they know who they are. And it happens for most big Hollywood stars. There's this hardcore collector base that you have to sort of tap into.
And break into and see if you can earn their trust and if they'll be a part of, making...
Yeah, if they'll give you some stuff, because they do, the funny thing is they have stuff that they don't really have ownership to, but they have the only remaining copy of. They have no legal right to it, but possession is 9/10 of the law, and if they don't give it to you, how are you gonna,
And has anybody ever shared something with you that they didn't have the right to share, and like could that cause trouble with them? Like if one of the studios was like, you have to give that back.
Oh no, because I mean no. It's only because it's something like, to tell you the truth, the poster for the film, the image I chose for the poster of the film, it's owned by Universal because it's a publicity photo that he did in the 40s, but they don't even have a copy of it. Like because I found it, I liked it, I called them and they said, we don't have it. Do you have it? Have you found it somewhere? So I did have a good copy of it that some collector somewhere we found.
That's amazing.
It's odd.
Now you're talking about working with Universal, and you did have to work with the studios in order to get some of the archive footage and stuff. Can you talk about that process and some of the challenges that went along with that?
So what people don't understand with these, a lot of people, maybe you guys understand, is that these films cost so much money because the studios have a clip licensing division, and they're out to make money. They charge for every little thing. So this didn't happen when I started, but for example, they charge you per minute or per 30 seconds. Okay, great. Any clip after 1960, you have to start paying SAG, DGA, and Writers Guild. Before 1960, you're okay. If there's any background music, they find the music cue and you have to pay for, if it's like 1/4 of a violin, they'll find it and charge you for the music. If there's a song, if there's a song in the movie using the clip, you pay for the clip, you pay for the composer, and you pay for the master and sync rights. So you're paying up sometimes 4 fees for one clip. It adds up so quickly, it's kind of a nightmare.
Are those figured out already, or do you have to go through a lawyer and contact the...
Yeah, you go through clip licensing, you beg, you try to carve out deals.
You cry. You show them footage of other people crying.
Yeah, exactly. It's really difficult because they are in the business to make money. They're in the business to make money.
So explain this to me, because the studios are going to benefit by this movie getting made, right?
They don't care. The clip
Why
licensing,
wouldn't they care?
well, because watch, I'm going to be blacklisted now, but clip licensing needs to show a profit every year. They don't really care that it's coming out on DVD and it's going to make people go out and buy his movies on DVD or download them or something, because that means home entertainment is going to make money. There's no synergy at these studios. Every department, every division needs to show a profit.
They're all out for themselves.
Kinda, yeah.
In a weird way. And
Yeah.
you've got to be able to facilitate between them and get what you want so that, you know, PBS can try to make a profit off this film. Now, how does that work?
They don't. They don't. I mean, they don't. I mean, I also work for Turner Classic Movies. It's just, these films, it's so hard to make a profit. I mean, there's 60 songs in this film, and it's really expensive. I mean, there'll be a DVD. Please buy it. And, you know, you hope, but, you know, it's a niche product at best. But the wonderful thing about places like PBS and Turner Classic Movies, for example, is they feel an obligation to preserve and present this material to new audiences, so that these really important, famous figures in entertainment and the cultural life of America are not forgotten. You know, it's bound to happen. You know, you can imagine in the 1950s, people were forgetting the silent film stars already.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's bound to happen.
Yeah.
You know, an interesting thing is one of the people that we use for photos, one of the companies in New York that we use for a stock house to get old photos from, I was talking to one of the guys and he said, well, just in the last couple of years, when GQ magazine or Esquire wanted to do a story on classic men's style, they would always call us for pictures of Cary Grant. He said, not so much anymore. Now they just call for Steve McQueen. So it's already jumped, you know, it's like, it's already fading away.
What's retro?
Yeah, it's generational.
Forward.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Now, if PBS knows that they're not going to make a profit off these movies, why would they greenlight it? Why would they say, yes, go ahead and make this anyway?
Well, I mean...
And how do you convince them to, like, yes, hire me and I'm going to make this movie for you that you're not going to make any money off of? Because as independent filmmakers, that's probably, you know, like most independent films never turn a profit. But that doesn't mean that they're not important to American culture.
Well, okay, so PBS is
Right.
is a nonprofit brought to you by viewers like you. I mean, it depends on contributions from corporations and the public. So I don't know that I can speak 100% to this accurately, but they have a budget, and I don't know that Nova or any of the other programs they do, they're all publicly funded.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of them, it's a non-commercial network, so they're not out to make money that way.
Yeah.
They have a budget, they have an allotment, and they are presenting the programming they think best fits their mission statement.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know that they are going to try to sell the movie. How are they distributing it? And also, there was a ton of music that was previously unreleased in the film. Do you think that that'll be a hit with fans?
I hope so. There's a soundtrack. We're doing a soundtrack to go with it, and there's some outtake material in it that's only collectors have heard it. So there's really some great stuff in there, and I don't know, you hope that the estate tells me that he's hugely popular still overseas and around the world. Hugely, like the numbers are astounding. So it's not that he's forgotten by any means, but I think in the U.S., it's also this bizarre double standard because, you know, people write in about like, oh, he hit his kids, but then you talk to people and it's like, well, yeah, but my dad spanked me. You know, it's this very bizarre puritanical double standard of what.
And I think generations are different too. I mean, if you read parenting magazines now, you know, like there's a lot more information on, you know, positive reinforcement and stuff back then. I just feel like everybody like spanked their kids back then.
They
I don't
did,
know,
and
maybe.
they still do it now. You know,
Yeah.
This is completely off topic, but I just heard this thing, I think on NPR a couple weeks ago. There was a human rights document signed by all the nations of the world about children's rights and about not being hit and all this. The only two countries in the world that didn't sign it were Syria and the United States.
What?
Yeah. So I'm not kidding. So the numbers were something like, from the 1960s to now, the percentage of parents who still spank their kids has moved so minutely in this country. It was the anchor on NPR was in shock when they gave him the numbers.
That's
It's
incredible.
like, what, in 40 years? It's barely moved.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Our country's archaic in a lot of things like that, though. I mean, the way that women get paid and whatnot. I could go on a whole tangent.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Tell me, how has winning an Emmy helped your career or not?
Not at all. People think that I'll be bitching and moaning about something,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll say, "But you won an Emmy," as if it's going to cure cancer. You know, it's like I rub it on me and something.
You don't? Do you take a shower with it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a nice. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing honor, and it was fantastic. But does it? It's great to be able to have bragging rights on it, but.
But do
no.
those bragging rights haven't helped you at all? You were telling me about trying to get an agent.
So I don't need an agent, luckily, for this kind of stuff, but people have suggested I get an agent, so I've gone on meetings, and this is just sort of more of a filmmaker thing. I go to these meetings at agencies, and they say to me, well, you just do talking head films, and you want to kind of throttle them because you have no script, and you go into shoot interviews, you have no idea what anyone's going to say, and you're not even really trying to lead them, but you're just trying to carve out the story and a point of view and make it engaging and entertaining. So it's harder than doing something with a script, because it's like just getting a box full of broken stuff and trying to put it together. And in a case like this, or a case like the Cary Grant film, most everyone was dead, and you're trying to make it come to life. So it's much harder. I was telling you earlier, I was working on a project with someone from Turner Classic Movies, and he turned to me, and we were on the set, and he said, "God, don't you hope for the day when we both have a script in our lap and we can just draw a red line through that page and just turn it over and do another?" Because it's completely flying by the seat of your pants. So it's much harder than you would imagine.
Yeah. Now, do you want to do narratives?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And your background, before you were a photographer, you did go to film school, right?
Yeah, I went to AFI.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a graduate of AFI.
Okay.
But I cut class. I barely. I mean, I cut
All
class
right,
so
you guys,
often.
cut class at film school and you'll end up
No,
with
you know
an
what
Emmy.
happened? I was actually just talking to the head of AFI yesterday
Oh,
because I
really?
was begging him for a screening room. And he knows it because I did these shows for Turner Classic Movies up at AFI, and they had me go meet with him, and I went into his office, and he wasn't the president when I went there, and I said, "I am doing these shows to get my tuition money back," because it was not good when I went there. It was just not a good time for the school.
Oh, really?
Since then, I've had assistants who, have sold screenplays, and he actually told me an amazing thing. He said that they hired Ernst & Young, the accounting firm, and they did a survey of the alumni, and there's not that many alumni, because the classes aren't that big, and 81% of the alumni are working in the industry.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an astounding high number. They were so happy and shocked.
Yeah, I think of AFI, and I think it's a very prestigious school. I was really
It was
surprised by
bad
that.
when I went there. But yeah, I cut class a lot because I had started working for a photographer and sort of was learning more doing that than,
What did working for a photographer teach you, and how's that shaped your career? Because
Well,
you have another career outside of
Yeah,
directing.
I'm primarily a celebrity photographer, but what it taught me was how to be on a set with a celebrity, and you were working with hair, makeup, wardrobe, lighting. The only real difference was the camera wasn't a moving camera, but it was at a very high level. So it was a more professional atmosphere to be around than that student body at the time trying to make these films. It was pre-digital. It was really clunky, I hate to say it, but they got it all together now. It's great. But it was a bad time for them.
Now, when you say celebrity photographer, what do you mean by that? Like, what
Not
is it?
paparazzi, that's what I mean. They come to me.
Okay.
I don't go to them. I do like Entertainment Weekly covers, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, Esquire, advertising for the networks, things like that.
Do you feel that that's helped your career as a director at all, or that it could?
It's very hard to get people to think outside the box. So you're thought of as a photographer, or you're thought of as a documentary filmmaker, and then when you want to move the line a little. They're like, no, but it's the same thing. It's like they're just talking head movies. Or, no, you just do this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard. People have so much on their plate usually, and then you come in wagging your tail. It's kind of hard to get people to think of you in a different way.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, with your photography, do you have a favorite kind of camera that you like to work with? Did you have a particular style that defines you?
This is Kismet. I shoot with a Canon. It's fantastic. Love that 70 to 200 lens. It's sharp every time. Yeah, a Canon usually, or a Hasselblad. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of Canon do you use? I ask out of my own curiosity. Honestly.
This is so D5, Mark 5.
5D.
Thank you. It's so bad. They hand it to me. It's bad. I mean, but it's the camera I like to shoot with.
Yeah.
But they keep, every time there's a new one, you
just get a new one and like try it out.
I mean, it's a rental.
Do you ever? You always rent your camera? Do you own any cameras?
No, I don't own any cameras.
What? I've never heard of any. I thought all photographers were like camera fiends.
Some of them, yeah, they are. But I don't own it, and I'll tell you why. Because not only does stuff change more rapidly now because of digital, but also you rent, and then you turn it back in, and they completely clean and maintain the camera. So every time you get it, there's no maintenance involved.
Right.
You're getting like a really cherried out camera.
Right.
So it's something that you don't have to worry about.
But do you find, every camera is going to be a little bit different. Do you find like you're always relearning?
No.
No?
No, they're not that different. No, they're really not that different.
Do we have any DPs out there?
Wait, but we're talking about still cameras.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess so. But still, a lot. The 5D is also used as a movie camera now too. And so I know that they have different capabilities and the
but I'm just using it. But I'm just using it for stills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you rent a camera when you do your interviews as well?
So I hire a DP. I don't get involved because I try not to get involved. I tell them the look that I want.
Yeah.
We talk about that.
Yeah.
I get my assistants who help me with lighting on stills to work on my sets. They kind of know what I like, but I don't get involved because every time I do one of these damn movies, it's a new camera, there's a new, I shot Mel with a Red. I don't even know I can't tell you what camera we used on Bing, I'm sorry.
That's amazing.
But it came out okay. It looks good,
I guess that's, at the end of the day, your artistry comes to what do you want it to look like. If you can get it to do that, that's your job as the director.
Cannot get mixed up with this. It's too, they start telling me the tech specs and all that. It's like, my head will explode.
What do you geek out over? As a director, as an artist, as a creator, what do you geek out over?
Honestly, is the smoke machine in the right, we're getting enough smoke on that, the overall look of it, that's what the minutia of it, I get involved in.
Yeah.
But I trust them to know that the camera will achieve the look that I want. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's also amazing what happens in post at this point too. The way you can color and correct in post it's actually quite shocking because it happens faster than when I'm sitting with my retoucher for the stills. They can make corrections on a moving image quicker. I couldn't believe the things that we did on the Bing film for color correction and tracking.
Yeah, it's really amazing how they can just pinpoint it and follows it through.
Because we shot with two cameras, but one camera was on a track the whole time moving, and it was amazing. It was literally faster than anything my retoucher can do for a still photo.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. We've got some questions here from the audience. They have this really cool web app that they're using called Meeting Pulse. The audience is voting and asking away. And they want to know, did the Crosby estate give a first look and get to give notes on the film?
Okay, so American Masters, the great thing is when you agree to do an American Masters, the great thing for us is you don't give up editorial control. They, I don't know what the hard and fast rule is, but we showed them the film for accuracy notes. And it was great that we did because there was some stuff that needed to be fixed for the sake of accuracy. But American Masters retains editorial control of their product. which is great.
Has there ever been a moment with any of your movies where somebody wasn't happy with the way that it came out?
No, thank God.
God.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
I can't even imagine what would happen.
We have another question. They want to know, what was the oddest fact that you found out about Bing while doing this project? So the oddest thing.
The oddest, it's not odd, but it's like the way that actually how warm he was. It actually took us all by surprise, the team that made the movie, because we went in thinking about him, we all went in thinking about him one way and left thinking another way. So if we did our job right, the same thing will happen to the viewer. Oh wait, I know what was. I know.
Okay, all right.
We had no idea. It's not an odd fact, but you know, he's the father. The New Yorker magazine did a thing about a year and a half ago, and it said the name of the article was "How Bing Crosby and the Nazis Invented Silicon Valley," and it's because he invested in. I'll say this really quick. You can cut it.
No, I'm interested.
World War II is coming to a close. An American GI confiscates a magnetic tape recorder from the Nazis. He looks at this thing and he says, "This is unbelievable. There was no such thing in the U.S." He takes it apart, like 36 pieces. He mails all the pieces back home individually. He gets back home. He puts it all back together. It's like magnetic tape can revolutionize the way things are done. Things like Bing did a radio show every week. He had to do a West Coast feed and an East Coast feed, and they were put on acetate, discs. That's how they were recorded. So somehow they got to Bing, and Bing's like, "Yeah, you mean I can record it and it can be spliced and played back, and I can be on the golf course?" He's like, "Boom, $50,000." He invested, and it started a corporation called the Ampex Corporation. They were the first ones to have magnetic tape, and from then on, that led to digital, and it's like boom, 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 boom.
Honestly, there's still, a lot of companies are still using tape to back out footage. When I was at NAB this last year, there were companies that were like, huge, big cassette tapes, but they were like, it lasts longer, it's really easy to preserve, and you just keep it cool, and will go forever.
Yeah, so he's the father of magnetic tape. I mean, there's ads we found from Variety where it's like Bing Crosby, Ampex, and he was able to record a show once for both coasts, and that was his impetus, but it spawned technology in the U.S. that was unparalleled.
And now we have YouTube, and people can watch whenever they want.
Exactly.
The next question is, working with the estate and the huge amount of tapes, how did you pick out the material that excited you?
Okay, well, we were lucky in terms of the dictaphone machines to a degree, dicta belts to a degree, because he was meticulous, and so he would dictate a letter to his secretaries, and then they would type them out, they would send a copy and keep a carbon copy. So the estate has notebooks filled with hundreds and hundreds of letters. So Amy and a couple other people went through the letters and read hundreds of letters, and picked the best ones.
What were some of the ones that you really wanted but maybe didn't go along with the story? What was some of the stuff that you had to cut?
Well, there was stuff where he talked about making certain films, and he talked about working with certain people that we weren't going into those films particularly. It was sort of great, funny stuff, but we weren't showing clips from that movie or delving into those movies particularly. So that to tell you the truth, it was kind of more gossipy stuff, kind of funny stuff that he was writing to friends or his attorney or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like listening into somebody's life, really.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that was awful was for someone who was so adept at technology, and the sound quality is really good. He had a guy whose name I'm forgetting right now. They recorded his biography, essentially. They worked on his biography, and we found the tapes, and we were really excited about it, or the belts, and we started having them transferred, and they put the machine between them, and they left the mic there, and the sound quality, you couldn't hear anything. So it was literally like I was born. It would have been, he could have narrated the whole film, and none of that was usable.
Yeah.
It was, you couldn't hear any of it. And by the way, the estate had to buy, the technology is not that old in the scheme of things. They had to buy 3 dicta-belt machines off of eBay and have sound engineers build one useful machine that we could play them on.
So with the addictive belt machines that they had, that they found on eBay, none of them worked anymore? So
They all had something wrong with them, so they had to take 3 to make one good one.
Oh, wow.
And that's what we used in the, that's how we got the sound off of it.
Wow. I didn't even think about, how you
It's
really
not that old. I mean, he was doing it up until the 50s, in the 50s and 60s. He was still dictating letters. It's not, they couldn't even find on eBay, like a brochure or a manual.
Okay.
It's like it disappeared,
That's amazing. Well, I mean, nobody uses that anymore.
No, but it's not, I mean, you could find piano rolls from the turn of the century.
That's true.
And
That's true.
It's something weird. It's like poof, gone.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's very weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Another question from the audience. They want to know, what would be the next celebrity you'd like to do a documentary on?
Yeesh, I can't say because we're talking about it with American Masters, so I can't. It's too premature to say.
Do you have anyone in the back of your mind that's on your wish list, even if it's not going to be the next one that you get to do, but somebody that you'd like to do at some point?
I have people that I wish I had done that have been done. So it's like, because most of the time these are so expensive to do, they're not going to get done again, ever. It's just too much.
You get your one shot.
Yeah, I missed the boat, or somebody else got to them before me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But nobody off the top of your head?
That's been done.
Yeah, sure.
Billy Wilder.
Okay.
Would have been great to do,
Yeah.
And he was actually done for the American Masters series. Stephen Sondheim would have been great,
Yeah.
So Marlon Brando would have been good, yeah.
And those have all been done?
They've all been done. Forget it.
They also want to know, what's the hardest obstacle you had to tackle in this project? What was the biggest thing you had to overcome?
It was, everyone's dead. All his co-stars are dead. Everyone, and truly, they're dead. Everyone, and then you start looking for like the children dead, the nieces dead. It was like, so you want to find people who, I sort of try to have a rule with these, which is, I don't really want to talk to people who, a lot of times documentaries will just talk to people who are kind of famous, but they're fans, but they don't really have a link. And it's just to get a famous face up there, and I kind of don't like doing that. So I try to find somebody that has a link to him.
Right.
So
or had some sort of personal interaction.
Yeah, so that was tough, to find people. That was a big hurdle right there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, going through all the dicta belts, and it was also a race against time because we need this film on for Christmas because he's so associated for Christmas. So the production schedule was squeezed a little. Usually we have a little bit more time, so it made everything speed up.
Yeah, and you said you were still adding things. You're like, even when it was
they told me,
to be
they were yelling at me, like, stop swapping pictures out, stop, but I kept finding stuff up until the last minute.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing really could have been 4 hours long if you wanted it to be in really detailed, because it is kind of a fascinating life, but it really moves at 90 minutes. It flows.
It moves very quickly, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because, to fit that much of one extraordinary person's life into such a short period of time, like, you had to cover a lot very fast.
Right.
Yeah, and the music helps it go along really well as well. They also want to know, who are some of his favorite artists to perform with? Did he and David Bowie get along during The Little Drummer Boy?
Well, so we talked to the people who wrote the arrangement for him and Bowie, and yes, the thing with him is so Bowie walks in, it's 1971? No, 76. So Bowie's at his full sort of androgynous phase, and here's Bing Crosby, and but the minute Bing heard his musicianship, to say that correctly, again, as his daughter says in the movie, he had no prejudices against race, sexuality, anything like that. If you were a solid musician, it all melted away. He was just, if he knew you were a professional, if he knew you were going to come to deliver, and bring everything you had to it, he was just a first-class musician. It's really funny how all these great, great jazz musicians will always cite him, current and passed away, will always cite him as a major influence. The way he put a song across, his timing, is still thought of as a huge influence today.
Yeah, he almost was conversational in the way that he sang. The way
we have an example in
yeah.
the movie where we play one song, and we play it 3 times with 2 of his contemporaries at the time when he was starting out, and then him. And you see the difference. One is Rudy Vallée, and the other one is Al Jolson, and it's the same exact song. And you see their approaches, and which was kind of the approach of the time. And then this guy comes along, and it's completely different. It's conversational, it's relaxed, it draws you in. And what you were saying earlier about quoting Tony Bennett about the art of intimacy, he came of age, Crosby comes of age technologically when the microphone comes of age. So he learns how to sing into a mic at the same time. I mean, the mic and him grow up together. Whereas Al Jolson or Rudy Vallée, it's before the mic and they're projecting to the last row. You know, it's way too big, it's way too bombastic. And he comes along and he's drawing you in, not pushing you away. So it was kind of great timing for him as well.
Yeah, this next question's really good. Whoever asked this, I like it. What are the similarities and differences in the sensationalism of personal lives discussed then versus now? I think that probably has to do with the way media portrays people and handles celebrity.
Okay, so, well, this links back to the question you asked about what surprised me. So the whole thing with the first family and the kids and his wife, the other thing we discovered that people sort of had conveniently forgotten is, as early as the 1950s, he's admitting in interviews what a bad father he is. He's admitting that he's a failure as a father, that he's too strict with them, that he has had trouble with them and he doesn't know what to do. So, because the idea of fetal alcohol syndrome wasn't even coined, the phrase wasn't even coined until the early 1960s. So he's at a loss, but he's admitting it to the press. And so he was always honest with the public, and people sort of forgot that. And again, now you'd have a PR agent and you'd have all this cover up and...
That's true, people handle it. Like, did they not have that back then?
Well, they did, but he sort of, I don't know, he was refreshingly honest. The other weird thing, I'll just say really quickly, is that we discovered is his wife died only at the age of 40. She had ovarian cancer, but again, she was a very, very severe alcoholic. And it was known around Hollywood. And when was she still alive? I think she might have even still been alive. Universal made a film that was a thinly veiled film about a singer and his alcoholic wife. And he was gonna sue. And his attorney said, don't, it's just gonna bring more attention to it. But Susan Hayward starred in the film and was nominated for an Oscar for it.
Wow.
And it's really melodramatic, but you watch it and it's like, oh my God, this is their story.
Yeah.
So.
And how do you think that relates to the modern paparazzi media?
Nobody would have I can't believe they had the nerve to do that while he was still at his height, and I don't know how they got away with it. I don't know that how somebody in his team didn't call the studio and say, don't make this movie, because I think it'd be really hard to do something like that now. So in many ways, while the press is so invasive now and people love to pick people apart, I think the industry would protect someone now, you know.
Do you think that he could have been as honest with the media today as he was then, and that he would have been more criticized or more, accepted?
I mean, the thing with him is he was, as Tony Bennett says in the movie, everyone thought of him as their neighbor. It's like, this is who you want as your neighbor. He's like this friendly, not snobbish, he's just like every guy. He's like, women fell in love with him, men wanted to be his friend. It's like this universal appeal that doesn't really happen that often. He wasn't polarizing at all. He drew people in. It was only after he passed away that the book polarized people.
Right. There's an audience member that asked the question that I always ask at the end of every interview, so we'll make this our last one, and that's what's the best advice you would give to an independent filmmaker? What's a lesson that you would really want to share from your experience?
good enough is not usually good enough. Like when you think you're just kind of exhausted or whatever, it's like, it's good enough. It's usually not. You should go the extra mile, you know, take the extra step, because it's what'll make a difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us today.
Thank you.
What a great guest. And thank you for tuning in, guys. Whether you're watching this live or on YouTube or listening on iTunes, we are so grateful for your support, and we want to keep bringing you interviews like this. So do me a favor and show some love by clicking the subscribe button and leaving some positive feedback. We are WMM Originals on YouTube and How We Make Movies on iTunes. I'll see you on the next one.